Hello everyone, again, it is Brandon here for another video. In today's video, I figured that now would be a very pertinent time to talk about how meaning plays into spiritual seeking and spiritual practice, and both on, a traditional Buddhist or Hindu meditation focused path, um, something like that. Meaning still plays a very large role in the ability for people to awaken and what they can awaken to. But there are still limits there. I would say Hinduism is much more aligned with where I'm going to be going today, talking about meaning and using it, and mainly where Hinduism discusses this, and really this vein of meaning goes through all spiritual traditions, and any awakening or any spiritual transformation of any person, or probably any being or anything that could ever experience anything. It's meaning and significance that actually drive everything. That yes, there is the insight, and it is correct technically, that at the absolute level, there is no divine God, predetermined meaning for things. That's actually the greatest gift to you as the center of literally existence itself. For you, that is how you experience it, and you must be honest with yourself. Yes, we know the present moment is truly what's really here. That's really what we have most of. We can we can remember the past roughly, filling in the details with imagination. Really, it's just a pure imaginative process to go back into the past. It's not here. You are reimagining that moment. And then there's future projections where you imagine what's going to happen. These are all fine and they all occur within the present moment, but there's just a lot of nuance that it takes in this whole area. Like, just the idea that there is nothing other than the present moment is going to change your experience of reality and what you think consciousness is and what you think truth is and all kinds of things the further along you go. So you are programming your mind with certain permissions that if I do a certain activity, this is a common outcome, or at least a possible outcome, which I have heard other people describe as something that's happened for them, or other people they know a lot about or something. That's the idea, is that you hear these ideas of enlightenment, you hear these ideas of awakening, you hear all of this stuff. And why do you think that awakening is probably more common now than when awakening first happened in a human? Because we figured out somewhat what it was. We created maps of meaning to navigate our way through the process and to trick our minds into having direct experience of this shit that someone supposedly would have first experienced. You would think, logically, there would have had to have been a first human being to have a genuine awakening type experience. That's very different and very much more randomized, or at least there is not much free will control for the individual in that lifetime about how to first have that happen and develop it from there. There's not a framework. The framework is pure belief. The framework is pure ego. The framework is pure bullshit. You have to realize everything in your life is bullshit, okay? And that is the most beautiful truth that you could ever discover on certain levels. Because what that really means is you have a creative license as the center of your subjective experience of all of reality as it stands right now, right there. You can do this. You can imagine new maps of meaning and methods and techniques and try them out and see their effect. Or you can find other methods that say grander things. This is really my point, is that your beliefs of what you think is possible determine the probability of you experiencing shit that you would have previously said isn't fucking possible. Once you have that first experience of a phenomenon or type of phenomenon that changes your worldview, you start to notice shit in that category way more because you accept the evidence. You change your whole frame of mind around it. You change everything. You instill within yourself the belief, and you create, in a lot of cases, you psychologically create a certain outcome, or you alter the probability of certain outcomes happening because you have such an expectation. This is a placebo effect that works through human relations and everything. This is the collective ego is, in a sense, a mind of God that can be manipulated. But the sad thing is that you are not currently, most likely, completely consciously and strong enough to be creatively active in the collective ego beyond your appearance to people on physical levels and stuff. And yeah, if you become extremely famous, you can surely affect the collective ego. Or even if you're not that famous, through ripple effects and such things. And maybe if certain ideas are really potent and it really changes like one person's life crazily significantly, and they have a big impact, maybe that does something. But my point is that you can start metaphysically altering your possibilities for experience. So we talk so much about the present moment and direct experience and all this stuff. And this stuff is bread and butter, beginner, non-duality fundamentals. And if you don't have that, you need to go get that. This video isn't for you if you don't have like really strong fundamentals in non-duality, extreme fucking openness, and really just curiosity and a playful nature towards life and existence and spirituality. And you've realized that this is, in a sense, a sort of playground that you are competing in, funnily enough. You are competing, but in many ways, the way to win the competition is to find the best ways to work with everyone else in your competition. It's to exonerate yourself through the service to others. That is one path that you can do, or you can really focus on just pure individual success and will and all of that, and focus more on an individual approach using others as a resource, in a very harsh way, you might say. So there are different ways, supposedly. Those have been discussed in other spiritual systems before that are quite popular. So that's why I bring that up, just because it comes to mind and is kind of related to the conversation. But importantly, meaning can change everything for you. And this is a very powerful example. Think right now of the most absolutely psychotic, and I mean like hallucinations, delusions, completely lost touch with reality, psychotic person. It could be someone in a movie, I don't care. Think about whatever your kind of idol in your mind is for the most absolutely insane, but, completely within normal human capabilities person. This isn't some like God. This is just a person, but they're that insane that they're completely out of this world through twisted beliefs. You have to understand the power. So we see the power when it's out of control and it's in chaos, but it's very strong, but it's in chaos. We see that, but we very rarely see it in order. And we do have some example, actually quite a few, actually a very large number of examples throughout history of claims of things of this nature that seem to be impossible to our more materialist and scientific focused worldview that exists today. Basically, if you're alive and you're on the internet, you do have a fairly materialistic view of things as a core programming of your culture. You do believe that things are material, primarily, unless you had very strong maybe family influences or multiple influences from different groups and people in your culture when you were growing up at a young age, talking about all this metaphysical stuff and how it was real. And for some people that is the case, but I'd say more people, even if they are fundamentalist religious people, they still operate in a way that they really just believe that the world is materialistic. They believe in miracles completely outside of their own power, and somehow they believe that they're not of the same exact species as Jesus Christ or any other great figure in a spiritual or religious sense. They forget that. They forget that, wait a minute, I literally have pretty much the same body supposedly as this guy. I mean, where are the differences? There certainly appear to be some, but where are they, and where are the similarities, and what is possible for an average person? What's possible for a lucky person? What's possible for a world-class person? I mean, I really do think it is absolutely completely possible, and we can do it really probably not in that long of time if we really focus on it as humanity, but I really think it is possible to create someone with, Jesus-like powers. I think that is completely possible. I don't think that all of these stories throughout ancient times of these magical abilities or, just crazy technologies or whatever, I don't think that every single case of this stuff is fake. I mean, that is ridiculous to say that in all of these cultures, every instance of a report of something supernatural or out of this world or out of our capabilities or out of our current understanding happen. That means that it was just a myth and they knew that it was fake, or they just were crazy or whatever. Yeah, so every culture basically every large culture to ever really exist in the course of humanity, at least since the dawn of modern civilization, agriculture, cities, or, settlements, things of that sort. We have to realize there's so much behind all of this. And forgive me, because I am taking a change in direction quickly in this conversation. I do want to say that I'm going to take this back to meaning. So you have to understand, we are dealing with a collective ego, and also probably you could think of it as, there is, in a sense, an objective reality. There is, in a sense, that aspect, but ultimately it's really not what it appears to be. And of course, non-dualism, all that bullshit. You guys should know what I'm talking about, hopefully. If you don't, go study non-duality or ask me questions in the comments. I'll help direct you what you need to go look at, what practices you can try. But the point is that meaning doesn't mean shit once you know that it's fucking fake. But once you know that meaning is, in a sense, meaningless, as far as some absolute or God, external God from you given meaning that you must follow. No, it's actually not like that. Now, there are patterns in collective ego. There are patterns in reality. If a human being tries to fly into a star, they will probably die, right? They will probably die. Maybe, I don't know. I don't know what happens if Jesus tries to fly into a star. I mean, does he blow the star up and he's fine? What happens? Who knows? Seriously, I mean, this is... these are things that I want you to realize are within the realm of possibilities. Because, for one, we could be and realistically, we are at a very infantile stage in development as human beings, as a species. We are very young, Homo sapiens at least. Maybe 2-3 years ago in anthropology classes and studying that stuff back then, the thought was that Homo sapiens originated around 200,000 years ago or so, with anatomically modern humans around maybe 160,000 years ago. The thought is, in Africa, there have been other findings and other theories to challenge pretty much all of what I've said right here, okay? But you have to understand, still, they change the dates and stuff and maybe some locations, but the general idea stays the same, that we are incredibly young. The Earth has had life for, I believe, 3 or 4 billion years. Now, of course, the theory is that it started out as very simple forms of single cell, and then just, small, multicellular organisms, and then moving up the chain. We know the supposed story, okay? So, I want you to realize, when you know a model like evolution, and from the evidence that you can see in your direct experience of reality, through learning about this science and learning about what the experts have found, and really looking through the evidence, you come to find that evolution is a better theory than some creationist theory creating the world roughly 6,000 years ago. This is just probably not true, right? I mean, just being realistic, we should know that, I think. As far as the reality we're operating in, you have to realize this can all be changed. It can all be changed. When you were born, did you know shit about becoming God realized, or no self-awakenings, or any of that shit? No. You stumbled across something which was a belief from someone that someone told you, or you were lucky enough to come up with some type of unique belief on your own, but that is actually really rare. Usually people come with spin-offs of beliefs on their own, but a pure belief, a pure thought, completely brand new category, that's very rare. So it's kind of like a mutation in genes. It's a rare occurrence, but it's what moves things forward, but whatever. So those are some of the ideas, but you're gaining meaning. So with evolution, you realize it's a more realistic model than some creationist bullshit, okay? like 6,000 years creationist, fucking bearded guy in the sky, heaven, even though Jesus says heaven's within. That kind of stuff, it doesn't make any sense, okay? Fuck it off. Get it out of here. Understand it historically, understand context, whatever, that's fine. But we know a model that seems to be better. And when you try to believe against that model that direct experience is showing you is what is evident right now, it is what is existing right now, this is what is, changing your experience of reality right now. This is the story. So if you want to change things, you do have to change the story, but the story doesn't really change without also direct experience change. So you can't just make up whatever crazy bullshit story you want necessarily. If you're really good at this, and if you listen later on in the video, I'm going to talk about some of the higher tiers of this that I've been using lately that have been absolutely ridiculous. I'm talking about, you can trigger completely, you can trigger awakenings within yourself through meaning, through belief, and they're also through different kind of spiritual techniques and stuff too, but it's really this meaning and belief found in these contemplations, and also imaginations and stories that you're uncovering and playing with. You're playing with the meaning. When you're playing with these stories, you can really significantly change your present moment experience. You can change it to become the most satisfied or grateful or happy or present or whatever thing you really desire or want to experience. You can change into that through the power of belief. I want you to realize that. Through concepts, through attachment, through ego, through self-creation, through the propping up of the individuated self, through the individual evolution of your reality, of your present moment experience that is evolving. You take control of that. You take control of the belief in that, and you take it in a direction that you would rather want to experience. What am I doing? One of the things I'm doing is, yes, I've discovered that I do have psychic talents. So that was something that I found in my direct experience, something that had existed there since I was a little kid. I didn't know what the sensations were. I didn't know what this stuff was. I didn't know that these crazy dreams and stuff happened to me were real and significant and were going to change my life forever when I reassessed them, 15 years later or some shit, or 17, I don't know how, but years and years later in a completely different phase of life, you're gonna look back at a dream when you're 8 years old and awaken, literally angelic divine powers within yourself. This isn't something I've ever really talked much about to people. I have told a few people and maybe posted it a few times online, but I don't think anyone's really thought about this and considered it. But no, I was in an awakening experience, and this was a very powerful Kundalini type of event. Is how maybe you guys probably more on the non-dual fence of things potentially. If you're watching this on the actualize.org forum, that's fine. If you're one of my viewers, maybe you see it the psychic way. But basically, there is some sort of spiritual or life energy going through you that is having a very profound effect on what is happening in your experience right now. That is what you can find yourself within, is that you're having very profound energetic experiences. And I discovered that a couple sensations that I had as a kid that I thought were normal, I just thought they were, they just felt good. and I didn't understand them, and I thought that people had them, but I never talked to anyone about them. I didn't know what the fuck they were. I figured it out by connecting to that dream that, maybe was a real event. I don't know, when I was 8. And I'm talking about an alien abduction. I am not claiming whether it's a dream or not. You guys got to realize this stuff doesn't really matter. If something's real enough in our culture to where it's like a gray alien concept, a gray alien exists enough within collective ego and culture for you to have significant, meaning-based, self-generated experiences around that thing. If only it's within dreams or imaginations or fears of what's in a dark corner, it does affect things. And that's maybe an example of one that you wouldn't want to mess with. You'd want to think about something more positive. The types of meanings that I'm talking about that are most significant are usually spiritual meanings, such as I am, Jesus loves me, and I am, forever connected to him through the Holy Spirit and all of this stuff. It gives you the context and the inner permission to give yourself as all of reality as far as you know it right now, this present moment experience. It allows yourself as that total experience to generate something like what you believe in more often than shit that you don't believe in. If there is, direct experience evidence that, at least to some extent, that lines up with it. You see, you can experience something that is delusional or is wrong, such as the earth is flat. You can experience that and you can live in that reality to where it makes absolutely no difference whether the earth was actually really spherical or flat. Back in those days, the technology they were using, they weren't really running into as many big issues because of that. Surely some, but it's not like today, with GPS and all this stuff. If we thought that the earth was flat, these things would not work. There would not be space capabilities or really flight or so many things. It would be very messed up. But the thing is, back then in that reality, they could live on a flat earth and experience that and be in that reality, even though from our eyes that wasn't the case. But you have to realize that in the human story, the way that we really think about it, Earth wasn't a sphere this whole time. It wasn't. What really mattered was the public opinion of the time. I'm trying to tell you that your meaning, what you ascribe meaning to, and what you believe in changes things more than you can possibly fucking understand right now. I'm telling you that if you experience enough of a feedback loop that you do have infinite power, for let's say you can become so enveloped in that belief that you could actually do things that were previously outside of your old capabilities. This type of belief enables things within us. This type of belief turns dormant faculties of reality online for you to experience. When you first find out or first time experience some type of phenomenon that's going to really change your paradigm, that is an eye-opener. That opens your reality. And you know what I'm talking about. This has happened to you plenty of times, whether it was from going from religion to science, understanding evolution, or going from materialism to non-duality, whatever. You see that at some point in your life, you had an idea that was shitty compared to where you think you're at now. And you change your idea and you change your understanding and you change the way you lived your life based off of that. And now you got to some different place because of it. That's how reality works. You change beliefs and it changes actions, how you act, how you react to reality, what you think is actually happening, and how you're structuring everything conceptually. How you structure things conceptually has an actual effect on how things occur physically in the future. Or really, it's probably in the present more so, is what we can say. It does happen in the present, but it's lining you up for for something that's going to feel like an experience of the future compared to now. You're going to feel like it's the future. It's still going to be the present moment, but you're going to feel like it's a future moment, and because you were primed in certain ways of belief through direct experience and then interpretation based off of that, you fed yourself a story. You got to realize, okay, this is a big one for people at actualize.org and people doing that type of work with psychedelics. If you are trying to become enlightened or awakened or realize some insight or some truth with psychedelics, but you've already studied about that thing and that truth and that philosophy or whatever, and you've actually found pretty good structural evidence logically as far as you can tell or contemplate, and maybe not in a linear, normal, logical kind of way, but in your own kind of, fucking non-dual contemplation thought form stream, like you figure something out. But what I'm saying is here, non-duality is a whole belief system, and it's a whole system of giving you permission to believe that an experience is possible, and then do what the system tells you it takes to have the experience, and then you have the experience, and then you believe in the system, and then you propagate the system, and then more people have the system, and then more people experience it, and then it just becomes more real and more real and more normal, and people don't even question it anymore. And there's nothing else, is what it feels like to people. But that can happen with like almost anything, really. With almost anything on the level of misunderstanding and on the level of proper understanding, given enough time and enough change in collective ego, a lot of things can change. For example, let's say that everyone did finally actually become non-dual idealists as far as their spiritual philosophy goes, and everybody believed that, and they believed that subjective experience was pure absolute truth, and there was nothing else to access outside of what's right now. There is nothing else. So this is all it is. So this is what you've got to work with, basically. That's the thought. If everybody thought that way, we know ways to change subjective experience in radical degrees compared to physical experience, or like regular everyday, no paranormal shit, no nothing. Like, we don't have the same power as we do in an imaginative realm, so there are limitations here, and this is a slower shifting reality than a normal dream at night, but it does work much in the same way. Your focus is what determines your reality and what happens. And that's the main thing. That's like the one-liner that you should really take away from this video. If you take away one thing that you keep with you for the rest of your life that will help you from this video, it's that line. That focus is what creates your reality and how it unfolds. If you focus on spirituality and ideas of being an infinite being, or an infinite non-being of nothingness, bullshit existence with no soul, or whatever, or however you want to fucking conceptualize the bullshit story of real things that are also kind of bullshit manifestations you made up. In this whole system, okay, we have all of these permission slips that we give each other, that we can And we even like gaslight and then also like overhype each other about our levels of enlightenment or whatever. It's really weird. It's really dysfunctional in a lot of ways. But my point with where I was going earlier is if everybody was idealists and they really thought that everything was in the mind, then you have the capability of really believing that you're experiencing something much different. And that's a philosophical value change and a spiritual value change to go from objective is the primary thing that is real. And even in Christianity, that's really what is normally taught is that God created an objective reality that was His outside of you or in some way separate from you, and then you were there, and there's this dichotomy. And that's the problem. That's the problem is that dichotomy. So it's really not there. It's really, there's no separation between you and the chair you're sitting in or the ground you're standing on or any of this stuff. There's no separating wall that actually defines anything. And this is your avenue to take your infinite creative power as the most divine thing in your direct experience to literally become God yourself and take that privilege back that you made for yourself to learn that path of development. Why are we doing this? Why are we doing this? Well, maybe if God is more intelligent than an ego, if we're going to say that, yeah, maybe in certain technical non-dual ways where you're like, there's no self, there's no God, there's nothing, bro. There's not even nothing. Like, yeah, if you want to say that, yeah, we can deconstruct even more. But seriously, just get real with me here. God, we typically think of in spiritual systems as being more intelligent, more powerful, whatever, than a singular ego, of course. But you have to realize the singular ego is actually what is the primary focus in this reality and how we experience it. If you cut off the arm of the body and the ego, then you're going to change the present moment experience very radically. If you take certain psychoactive substances, if you hold certain beliefs, if you, such as, you got to think too, like even something as simple as believing in racism. Believing in racism or getting roused up by it, either in support of it or finding it reprehensible. It actually doesn't really matter. From all these people talking about enlightenment and absolute liberation and absolute freedom and all this stuff, you got to realize you wouldn't be saying there's a problem with racism if you were really that ideal that you're talking about. I think that ideal is really a really shitty idol of God, and you've got to realize there is no idol of God, that God is the present moment, what's here now, and that's all we have to analyze. That's all the data we can really work with is what's here right now. We can work with that. And in the future, it will be a slightly different situation or a vastly different situation, and we will work with that then. That is what we do. We come into supposedly this objective world of God, but the objective world of God only exists within subjective experience. That is a singular awareness. It's a singular awareness. You got to realize, even if you could experience the sensations of two human beings at once, it doesn't mean there are two awarenesses. There's one awareness sensing two sets of sensation receivers. That's all it is. That doesn't mean there's anything about solipsism, okay, at its core. It doesn't. To have telepathy with another being doesn't mean anything about disproving or proving solipsism, that kind of thing. So that's a little off topic, but I mean, it is related overall to everything. I mean, this is just me thinking about this topic of meaning and just explaining kind of how I've been thinking about it lately and working with it. So where I was going before, I was bringing up the psychic thing. So I found out that I do have psychic abilities and they are legitimate. Other people have been able to feel them. This isn't something just within my subjective experience, will say the egos, whatever. There are other human beings responding to these sensations, recognizing them, discussing them with me, all of this stuff. It happens very frequently, actually, that I have a connection with these psychic senses with another person. It's actually very common, and it happens more and more for me now, especially the more spiritual people I talk to. It just happens more and more. It becomes more sensitive, more active, and I just pick up on more and more stuff. And it's a very pleasant way to live, because these are very pleasurable. You might call them chakras, or just basically it's an information receiver. It is a sense of itself. It's a it's a specialized sense that you might say comes from essentially a chakra of some sort, or that something like that operates through something like Kundalini energy, or the Holy Spirit, or clairsentience coming through the crown chakra. Like that, these are all explaining like some things related to what I'm talking about. And I do have another sense too, which is a little newer to me as far as working with it. So I don't want to talk too much about that, because I want to make sure that I'm giving out some good stuff. I mean, I could tell you some good things about it, but that's probably for another video. So whatever. So there's the psychic thing. So I discover that in my direct experience that I do have these capabilities. I even have a couple instances where I accidentally heal people. I have very, remarkable manipulations of the physical laws of reality, in things such as, my phone charging, without being plugged in or near a charger or whatever, turned off right next to me, going from like 5% battery to 100% when I was out of battery and actually needed to use my phone battery and didn't have a charger with me for the car or anything. I was using this fucking... my phone was almost dead, and I had to use GPS to go to a date after meditation with my meditation teacher, which was scheduled. So I woke up, realized I forgot to plug my phone in, and then I did the meditation, all that shit, and I had subconsciously thought about the battery so much that when I was going on, I realized I was thinking about this battery, and I was meditating, and when I came out of it, it had manifested exactly what I needed. And I've had this happen with things such as vape juice, or I've had a lot of really, really radical, crazy things happen to me that if it happened to you, you would really scratch your head and say, how the fuck does any of this make sense? Because you do know that that what you're experiencing is real on a very real level, and it's not just mind tricks and psychological delusions. There is certainly that aspect for really anyone who's on this path and experiencing some of the higher levels of things. The idealistic powers of the mind and your existence are going to start to take hold, and you're going to start to have more creative ability and influence on your reality. That's going to happen. And things are going to start to align more for what you actually need to, if for more rapid development. Because basically, once you discover non-duality, you're as far as where most humans are right now, you're almost at the finish line. You're almost at the finish line for humanity in that game. As far as how it's been played so far, there's much further to take it, and that's what I'm trying to do in my personal life. And really, it's not even a life. I am hopeful for some sort of ability to experience a soul lineage where I can continue this journey as what's currently Brandon Rowe into other forms in the future to keep continuing the work. I want to create an ego within reality that has the ability to control. I want that experience. I want the God experience. Why do I want that? Well, probably just to get rid of it, to be honest. It probably just to get rid of it is what it's going to end up. I don't know. Maybe. I will see. But that is the goal for me. It is to maintain an ego so that there is the free will, conscious control aspect of the experience, and then also the resulting creation from it. This is something that I want to taste. I want to have this. This feels right to me to pursue this. And you might say, oh, that's really egoic, or it's a distraction from the path. Whatever. I mean, this is how I want to live my existence for maybe millions or billions of years, if we want to put it in a time context. As what you might call me as a soul, if there are individual soul lineages, and I have one and you have one, or whatever, if that is a thing, the soul lineage that I'm on, it certainly appears from things that I've discovered and meanings that I've uncovered in my own life, that there is a soul lineage to dominate and to overcome and to evolve. And it's not a negative thing. It's actually a very loving and positive thing. But this is a call for higher evolution within my soul. This is a call to go beyond deities, to go beyond anything ever previously conceived, and to transcend all of this in a much more complete and total form. That's what I want to do. I want to revolutionize God. That is my goal, is to revolutionize and further glorify God. And yes, do I want egoic feelings and experience of the grand journey of that? Yes, of course. And if that's possible, that's what I'll create. And if that's not possible, that's fine. This is just an attempt at creation and an attempt at directing experience by me. It is a test at the end of the day. And I realize that when you're playing with meaning as one of your main tools in the spiritual path, you have to realize that the meaning is like the hot dog that you're dangling in front of your face, and you have to dangle like a really tasty looking hot dog, but like in reality you're probably gonna taste like less juicy hot dogs than what you're giving yourself the illusion of. So you're gonna give yourself the illusion of, like, I'm going to be healing people physically like next year. You don't actually need to make time goals like this or any kind of bullshit like that. I don't think that's gonna really be important or work very well. What I'm saying is, you want to think about the possibilities of these things as real things that can and quite literally will happen. You want to think about this stuff as actually being the case. This is where the deeper manifestation abilities come into play. Is if you don't need to believe things. Actually, it's more about resonating with the meaning you create in your connection to things. It's about resonating. It's not, you don't have to actually philosophically or spiritually believe 100% that you are that thing and that what you're following with meaning wise is actually the complete truth. No, you don't have to have that type of belief or faith. You just have to have enough love and connection or some type of emotion, or that's at least what I'm seeing so far, to the whatever this object of devotion or thing that you're connecting with is. When you have that connection and it's really strong, that's when I've noticed you do tap into more things, and that is when you can consciously control it, is usually through those types of devotion connections with deities and things of this nature. This is where I was talking about bhakti yoga in the Hindu system at the beginning. That's very important, but most modern most people online, especially in the West, learning about Hinduism and stuff and Enlightenment, they're probably not as gung-ho about all of the individual gods and the symbolism and actually believing in any of that stuff. I mean, do we actually believe that there are 330 million deities in the Hindu system, according to some people? Like, do we actually believe that? I mean, honestly, I think that's completely possible, that there can be an experience of that. Yeah, that can be had, I certainly believe. But the point is, you can't necessarily trust direct experience because you're the one who's really directing direct experience. The truth is that the game is the absolute truth. The relative experience is what is unchanging and is what matters at the end of the day, or is what is the core of things, is the idea that there is this relative aspect and it is hard to escape. And maybe the reality is that it's hard to escape because escaping it can ruin it. And that's an idea that Leo has talked about on actualize.org about God realization. And he said, in some of these states, once you start to get into complete God realization creation capability mode, like if you're actually there enough, like it's going to lose meaning. So that's the thing. I'm trying to create a personal soul lineage, if there's such a fucking thing, if that is even possible. This is something I'm testing and I'm looking into. If there's that possibility to create that, or to create whatever experience comes after this human body, if it dies, okay, and that does change the context of everything. If that does happen, that is a bit problematic, and that is a bit of a setback, right? Especially if, there's infinity and eternity at play, and maybe no time at play, who knows? So many different theoretical approaches to what could happen here. But you just gotta realize it's all bullshit. It's all bullshit, but the more that it's connected to your direct experience, and the more emotionally connected you are, and the more attached you are to something, the more you're going to experience that being real, whether it's real or not. So yeah, when I was talking about the psychedelics being problematic epistemically, the problem is that your using a substance that can very drastically affect your experience of reality. And you're feeding yourself with non-dual philosophy for years before that, sometimes, for people. And then they have the psychedelic experience, and a lot of the times it's some ego death experience like people talked about in some trip report you read. And then you think, okay, I got it, I experienced it, I've had the direct experience, I know it's real. Well, what if we just change things and we go a little bit absurd here and you just give me a little leeway, okay? What if we're in a reality where everything's the exact same, but instead of taking psychedelics, um, in this, or well, instead of taking psychedelics and discovering the different non-dual stuff we believe in, maybe everybody's talking about how mushrooms connect you to Jesus, and then he can save you, and he's above you, and he's the only source of getting to God. If you were told that and you were really fed that information, yes, maybe there is an inclination within the substances themselves, and there probably is to an extent, to give non-dual experiences. Yeah, I think that's true. They do give non-dual experiences on their own. But when you're prepping the mind with maps of non-dual experiences that you've never had yourself, you can fool yourself into thinking that you've experienced something that other people are talking about, when really there's no way to know that you're really experiencing the same thing, even if it sounds identical between two people. It subjectively could be very different, if only simply because of the personality of the person, or the normal state of consciousness of the person, or the karma of the person, whatever. There's so much here. There's so much to work with. But this is meaning theory. This is meaning manipulation through imagination and through direct experience connection, through linking those in the most optimistic way, basically, that is reasonable, that you can really get behind and connect to and resonate with. Basically, the grandest thing you can resonate with that aligns somewhat decently with your worldview is what you should be aiming for. And the more personally significant whatever figure or whatever virtue or whatever thing you focus on that you want to become more of your reality. This is the law of attraction, by the way, at its highest form. This is you literally, potentially going to such a degree that you will, you will collapse all of reality into a true singularity of a true representation of idealism, of your experience right now is the only thing that exists. And then if you get there and you're in a state where you are hallucinating, where you can create anything that you want, you won't be in this world anymore. Even if we still see you and you're like acting crazy, or you're like seizing out, or you're in a coma, it doesn't matter. You're not here anymore. And whatever's here isn't really you anymore. You're off in this other shit. And, that has some power to it. It does. I mean, that you could experience and completely change everything in your own kind of God consciousness, insanity, through a solipsist, idealist, extremist kind of view, which might actually be the case of what is actually real. Okay, that's the funny thing. That actually isn't a weak system. When you look into it more, it actually does have quite a bit of support. Okay, but so again, if you do inquiry into solipsism, yeah, it's going to increase the chance that in the future you believe in solipsism or reject solipsism more than you did in the past. It's going to have an effect because you're putting your focus there. So whatever you want to change or become more or less of in reality, just put your focus on it. Just put your focus on it. If you want to learn about psychic abilities, put your focus on it. That's what I'm doing. And it's fucking working very well. Whether 2 years ago in the reality that I was in, psychic abilities were even really possible, I don't know if that's true. I don't know if I'm in the same reality that I was before. I don't know what constitutes shifting a reality. Is every time that I wake up in the morning some sort of reset where, due to the beliefs that I've instilled in myself and ego that I have, that I've subconsciously generated an entirely new dream reality that resembles the one that I normally wake up into every morning? Is that possible? Yes, it's certainly possible. And that's a fucked up thing, is that if you really get into epistemology, it really dismantles so much of your ability to get traction anywhere to any real degree. And you do have to take leaps to get anywhere in life. Epistemically, you do have to take pretty big leaps to get anywhere. Even something like Leo talks about on actualize.org, he loves to talk about direct experience, but even more so, he likes to talk about some of these higher insights and awakenings as becoming directly conscious of something, which supposedly, as far as it sounds, is something a little bit different than just direct experience of something. So that's interesting. So it's like direct experience of a virtue as the core of reality itself, maybe. That could be a way of kind of describing it. Rather than, rather than sitting on your couch and experiencing yourself sitting on the couch, you experience the oneness of the universe and yourself as all things. And you have that experience, and then that's a new reference frame that you have, and you're going to probably have more of that kind of themed stuff in your future experience of reality. That's just how things work. But yes, I mean, seriously, who knows what happens with something such as a parallel reality? Who knows if you're in a different reality every time you wake up, that you never return to the same one, it's just similar? I mean, these are things that you can't really get around very easily. These are problems that, but the main core of this video isn't a problem. The main core of this video is actually a tool, and it's actually a method, and I'm giving you understanding of that, and that is of meaning. So we understand the insane person idea that when someone's really crazy and they really believe in something, they can completely change their subjective experience of reality. But what most people don't realize is that we can change objective reality. We can literally perform miracles. I've witnessed such things. I don't know if it's fair to say that I did these things more than it is that I was simply there and I was the vessel that this energy moved through. And these more miraculous types of experiences, I didn't control what was happening. This was purely chaotic magic changing my reality in physical, measurable, just completely objective ways. I mean, that's how it worked. It was pretty crazy. But yeah, the placebo goes throughout the collective ego of all of society. The placebo is a spiritual placebo, it's a psychological placebo, it's a physical placebo. This is in so many ways tied to manifestation. Because honestly, if you placebo yourself enough into a physical case where your brain chemicals are different, I mean, just think about your ability. You could delude yourself into an awakening. That is a possibility. That is a possibility. You could delude yourself so much with a belief of something that it actually snaps the system that's holding everything up. Because that's what the belief is around, the ability to do that. So when the belief is so strong in that, it does have the chance to really take hold. Does it always? No, it doesn't. That's why, I mean, yeah, a lot of enlightenment and stuff is kind of like a waiting game. It's kind of like being patient, and you do the practices and you hope that you have good luck to get quick results. That's kind of what we look at. Now, of course, there are methods like using psychedelics or other certain techniques that might be a little faster, maybe a little riskier. It's these are realities. This is something that's part of spirituality now, and I think it is a very good thing that it has become more of a part of spirituality in modern times, that there is this trend for more psychedelic use for spiritual reasons, because it really does work. And it doesn't necessarily work perfectly for all of the goals and states and descriptions of the old religions and old times, but that's not necessarily what we need to do. We can follow those models and have those experiences in the ways that they've been described to be reached, but we can now go so much further than before because we have so much more of a holistic understanding of things, and we're really able to work in unison with things such as the internet and globalization and just this connective reality that we now live in. We are exposed to so many different possibilities, so now we have the ability to latch our meaning and significance onto so many different possibilities that seem plausible enough that we really can get behind them, resonate with them, manifest them, and experience them directly through our own manifestation and creation itself. But manifesting in this reality is more difficult, and it is more complicated, and it is a little bit of a dance. But ultimately, you've probably seen that it works in your life. When you have a goal and you work towards it, even if it's in a very basic physical way, you are manifesting something. We just have to realize that on spiritual and psychological levels of manifestation, the results are going to be more drastic once you get going. Once you have proficient enough skill in one of those areas to manipulate things by choice for, let's say, consciousness work and working towards liberation or the use of different abilities or cities or whatever you want to do, there are all these different possibilities and roads you can go down. But again, you go down these roads usually because you're introduced to them by someone else, by someone else's idea, not actually by your personal direct experience, but by another person telling you their direct experience, supposedly. And if you take the faith to believe what they say, and you try things out with an earnest heart, and you discover that maybe, hey, some of these things are real, or hey, maybe this is way stronger than I even gave it credit for, or it was even described to me. Who knows what is possible for you and what exists in your reality and your subjective experience. And I don't know if it's really fair to say that we live in the same world. We are that different, and you have to realize, even on a non-dual level, whatever, we are that different. You and I right now, if you do have a conscious experience in the same exact nature as me, we have no way of truly connecting that conscious experience between both of us. We have no method where we can really choose to do that. And I think that personally, from some inquiry and contemplation that I've done, I don't think that it is actually possible to merge consciousness in such a way that you could know if there was consciousness outside of yourself. Because really, to truly be measured and be tested, it must be sensed by you already. It must already be within your awareness. So it's kind of a catch-22. I don't know if I explained that super well, but I do have some in-depth writings about it that I could share if anyone was interested. You can comment below. But so yes, this is an interesting situation we find ourselves in. We do have the complete power to change many things in reality. Maybe not as quickly as we want, maybe not exactly in the fashion that we desire, but we do have the powerful ability of the individualized, ego and the collective ego and these subconscious minds underneath these things that exist as sort of subtle egos that also manifest and are really the main part of the manifestation. See, if you don't subconsciously believe that you can telepathically communicate with an alien, you're probably not going to be able to do it. If you don't actually believe in the possibility, the chance that you're going to actually experience it is so low compared to if you thought it was possible. And this goes whether the actual phenomenon is a legitimate one or not. The probability of experiencing one way or another changes, in favor of what your paradigm is feeding you. In all cases, it changes the ability for you to interpret reality in that way. So, yeah, I mean, let's see, this video is, we're at like a minute and, or sorry, an hour and 12 minutes. I mean, this has been a pretty solid video overall, I think. I think the topics were related. I mean, it did flow all right, probably, I would think, for people watching. The problem is that some of the connections might be a little bit too individual in my head for people to follow completely well, but we'll see. I mean, it's not really a big issue either way. So, yeah, thanks for watching. I appreciate you guys coming to this video. I want to let you know, I mean, just as part of my development, I've been in a no-mind experience, I think really pretty much every moment of this entire video that I've shot in front of you. And this is 1 minute and 13 seconds. And this happens pretty much every time that I make a video now. And if you've watched my recent videos, you've probably seen me mention this a few times, if you actually watched them all the way through. So this is something I've been noticing, is that I've really been getting a lot of deep progress into actually permanent baseline shifts in consciousness. And one of the main ways that this is occurring is that I'm naturally living in no mind most of the time, really no matter what environment I'm in or what I'm doing. But I've noticed that when I'm recording videos specifically about these topics, really, it's pretty much an effortless no mind. Why is that? That's because really this is an authentic communication and message coming from me. This is something that I enjoy, I'm passionate about, and I want to teach about. So that's why the no mind is so easy. Really, no mind is also similar to the Western concept of a flow state too. So there is the flow state, there's no mind, and then at a deeper level, there is no self. And that, I think, comes most easily when you find yourself in a deep no mind experience, but you have the ability within the experience to then turn the no mind in on itself, and the emptiness then views the emptiness. You yourself as emptiness view yourself as what you are, emptiness. And the self from there, for me, can never really be grasped in the way or treated in the way that it used to be. And I guess in this sense, I mean, I would say from a traditional Enlightenment standpoint, when I made the video the other day about stream entry, I do think that that actually was probably accurate. That was a complete stream entry, that the process of full enlightenment finalizing itself as far as baseline states go is almost there. It's pretty much, this is happening. There's no stopping it now. There's no stopping it. Whether I stop practice more, it's basically a done deal for me right now. To continue to develop a more and more just present and authentic expression of what I am in myself. And that's what I live for. Is I live for authenticity, and I think that's a very high value. I think that every person has a unique role to play in this reality that we're in, and we are in this boat together, in this shared reality that we have, that we're experiencing. We are in this boat together. And considering that we're here together, I see really it makes the most logical sense to be rather cooperative where possible. So that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to just create methods where I can live a very low impact life that is not causing much of a ruckus for anything. I'm pursuing my own truth, and that is my focus, and pursuing my own abilities, like with the psychic abilities. I would like to learn how to consciously heal people on emotional and spiritual levels. I've done it accidentally, but I'd like to learn to do that at will, because I mean, to think about the significance that ability would have as far as a subjective egoic experience of reality goes, which is a reality here. There is an ego that exists. Even though I can turn the no mind in on itself, the nothingness source of thought, thoughtless thought, basically thought with absolutely no substance whatsoever, turning in on itself. Really, it's just awareness turning in, and it's really just an imagined second awareness. Really, it's all just the same thing. It's a process that's it's occurring itself, and there cannot really be resistance to it from myself anymore. I can't resist me as an ego, and I can't resist me as a higher self, or a universal self, or as the all. Or as awareness, whatever, the watcher. There are so many different concepts and ways you can cut this up, dice this up. The point is, the resistance is gone between the character and awareness itself. And that idea and the whole concept of there being an ego or not an ego, or awakening or not awakening, or all of this stuff, this has all fell to the wayside. Enough radical states of consciousness were had. Enough triggers for spiritual development were done. This has happened to me now. And I'm really glad that I was recording I was filming that video of the no self Enlightenment experience, that video. I didn't, I mean, I said it in the video. I was talking about stream entry and feeling like the natural state and things such as that, and it actually feeling quite like the Frank Yang description of enlightenment that he was talking about. And I was in a manic state. Well, not manic. No, I wasn't manic, but I was in a no mind state. Sorry, I was in a no mind, rather shadow accepting state. So I was fine to joke about things that were pretty edgy and unnecessary, and then I, had a very beautiful shadow healing when I basically cried about, love for one of the victims of the facetious perpetrator, which was the focus of the joke previously. So you guys probably didn't follow that unless you've watched that video. The point is, yes, like, there are aspects of this that aren't going to look enlightened to you. And you have to realize this is an inescapable thing. Enlightenment is an individual word that you define. And whatever you say enlightenment is what enlightenment is in your subjective experience. And for me, I call this sufficient traditional enlightenment or liberation for, it is sufficient for normal life. There are plenty of teachers walking around here who usually do not use the exact phrase or say this too much, but yes, that they are enlightened. That is the idea, that is the treatment of them that they get from their students and organizations and the public and all of these different things. There is this air of accepting the enlightenment of that person. Well, for me, there's not that air. I'm a 25-year-old, white guy, who has mental illness and has done psychedelics and, thinks he has psychic powers and has had telepathic connection with aliens and actually a lot of way crazier and more radical shit than those that I haven't even told you guys about, really. It's ridiculous. Like, how can I expect you to take me seriously other than just I just authentically lay it out on the table here. Hey, this is what I've had. This is what I've been doing, and this is what's real for me. And if you want to listen to it, you can. That's basically all I can do. And I step away and you can judge it from there. But I don't have the ability to really persuade you any more than I am now. I'm going to act such as this. This, like, people say, I can see right through you, and they don't realize, like, yeah, I know you can see that I have an ego. Like, I'm talking, of course, I have an ego. The point is that there was a sufficient enlightenment experience that persisted and stayed from the initial experience. It was not just an experience, it was a realization that was permanent of no self to a rather radical and high degree as far as being able to have conscious experience of, this reality. As far as still being able to do that, it was it was a complete no self annihilation, really. And it was, the self was not able to be grasped. And like I said, I still cannot grasp the self. I still cannot locate the self. I still can't really find it in any satisfactory way. Although I'm perfectly satisfied with the role that it's doing right now, and with now the reality of the resistance being dropped between the two things, the awareness and the character or whatever, if you want to split them up, I don't think it's right to split them up. This is where people get this wrong. This is where people get this wrong. You're splitting the self and the ego. This is ridiculous. You're saying the ego isn't real. This is ridiculous. There's a difference between something being an illusion and not being real. An illusion is something that points to a different conclusion than what's really behind the scenes, the truth, okay? It is an appearance within reality that suggests a wrong conclusion, that pushes people toward a wrong conclusion. The wrong conclusion with the ego is, this is me, this is the limit of me, this is all I am, this is all I will be, most likely. That's the false idea. Once that's realized as false, you have to understand that the ego was an illusion for you thinking that you were the ego. That doesn't mean that the ego doesn't exist as something in reality. We wouldn't have words for it. We wouldn't be able to talk about it if there wasn't some sort of appearance of ego. And this appearance of ego is one of the most consistent things in your direct experience in life. Whether you're an awakened person, unawakened person, it doesn't matter. If you're talking about spirituality in this context, you've been fucking bombarded by yourself, by others, by books, by videos, by fucking God and experiences and everything. That you've been bombarded with all this shit. And it's brought you to certain conclusions and certain experiences, and that's beautiful. And if it's anything like what my experience has been like, it's been invaluable, and there really couldn't have been anything better, is how I feel. There couldn't have been any better story. It couldn't have been written in any better way. There's perfection in the life that I was given here. And I don't know if I would really say that about every life, because I wouldn't have sufficiently awakened in so many of these other karmic situations. What is karma? Karma is the life conditions that exist. Or just the conditions that exist. And your karma is the conditions that exist for you. It's what you literally have to work with. It's the cards that you're dealt. And where does karma come from? It's simply cause and effect in the universe. If you as a previous form harmed this form, well, that has consequences. And maybe it's not direct consequences to you. Maybe it's consequences to another part of the whole. It doesn't necessarily matter. This is just simply the idea. It is cause and effect. And it certainly appears that I did have some sort of, if we're going to use a past life model, okay, if we're going to take a little bit more Hindu and Vedantic in approach, let's say there are some past lives at play. Well, I probably was very spiritually focused in many of these lives. I also probably picked up a lot of the traits that I have now as far as intuitive, kind of deeper personality soul traits is how they feel to me. This is what I want to work on. And what I'm currently working on the most with my soul traits, really one of the main ones is power. There is the requirement for me to be whole, to actually hold within myself either immense power or the experience of that or something of the sort. This is an innate desire of me as an entity, as being here the whole time. As far as memory goes back, this was basically there, this type of desire and feeling and whole within self that needed to be filled. And I'm realizing, this could be some type of some type of generational wound. Who knows? I don't know exactly what this is, but this is some type of deep problem with power, and it's not a problem of me necessarily having a problem with power. It's a problem of what I need in this life or to progress is way more fucking power. That's my path. And it doesn't mean that it's your path, and it doesn't mean that it's necessarily good or bad. You know, the people look at power in such a negative way a lot of the time. Even though, you know, in their personal life, if they were given more power, they'd probably love it, and they'd probably go for more of that if they could. Most people. But they're going to talk shit about it and say to be humble and act like that's the virtue they really care about, when probably they really don't. If they had the option, they would probably choose power. But the thing is, yes, so power is demonized in this sense in spiritual communities, and this is such a problem and such a sad thing to me, because we are, or at least some of us, I can say, or at least myself, fuck, I can't really 100% say other people have the same experiences as me, but I have met many people who seem to have similar abilities in the psychic sense, and similar connections to different spiritual guides, you might say, like different deities and stuff. This does really help in the same meaning vein that I was talking about before, that whole idea that you're capturing. I mean, I've explained it basically ad nauseum, I would hope by now, but yes, I mean, you're capturing the meaning of connecting to that deity, what that deity represents, all of that stuff, and you're bringing more of that into your focus, and thus bringing it more into your reality and manifesting a reality more like what that deity represents is the hope. There's a possibility of creating some shadow focuses too when you're doing this kind of stuff. When you're doing consciousness work, especially I'm of any real intense sort, when you're looking for the light, you're going to have to actually address the dark many times on many strong levels before you can grow in power. You have to actually be polarized in light and dark energy to be powerful. In my experience, to walk the most powerful path is to actually have a deep root in both. And this is where a lot of people go wrong in spirituality, in my opinion. They go too much for what everybody else thinks is good, and they don't go enough for what their soul is actually looking for, and what their destiny and purpose is in this reality is to fulfill. They're not focusing on that. They're following collective ego too much. Collective ego is great. It gives us a lot of good guidance and a lot of things to work with, but one of the problems is its limiting nature. It is going to keep the possibilities down. It is going to suggest that certain things cannot happen. So you have to trust your individual abilities and manifestation power to move things forward in the way that you want. If that's what you want to do, which I would suggest that is what you want to do. You do want to be able to have more freedom and creative control in your experience. You're not going to become some fully realized God being that has so much power that all of existence and reality forever becomes meaningless irreparably. I mean, I'm just going to tell you that's just not going to happen. There would be a way to repair that situation, I would really think. In the case, if you're thinking of a being with that level of power, there would be some type of workaround to go back to an individual experience trapped in Maya. There would be that possibility. So Yeah, I mean, this has just been, fucking contemplation hour, bro. Contemplation hour. That's what we're doing, man. That's what we're doing, and it's a good time. So I guess I can talk a little bit about the clairsentient sense that I'm working on now. It's centered actually right here, and it extends back into the skull to some degree, or some extent, of maybe 2 inches or something at most, or I don't know, maybe a little more. It depends. It expands and contracts, and it becomes more intense and then more subtle. It's a very dynamic thing, but I can put focus on it, which does seem to activate a sensation there, which is quite pleasurable and spiritual feeling in nature. And when I focus on this, um, I just have a very good intuitive feeling of safety. Now, I have been told about a chakra specifically at this location before. Some of you people might be talking about the third eye. Well, typically people talk about the third eye as being the pineal gland, which is actually in the center of the head. I've experienced what that feels like, for myself at least, before, as a physical sensation. And so that was quite different than whatever this is. And I don't know if calling it a chakra is necessarily accurate either. Maybe simply a clairsentient specialization ability that I have. I don't know. There are a lot of different ways to categorize this stuff. It did strengthen a lot around the time that I acquired a new dedication and focus and brought this into fruition, a deeper connection with a spiritual master who I had worked with before but had some reservations about. And eventually I looked where I needed to and followed my intuition and heart, and I've realized that this is the right decision for me. Now, you've got to realize I'm not talking about a human spiritual master. And you have to understand the master student dynamic is incredibly important. And even if you realize that, oh, I'm non dual and I'm the universe and I'm everything, that doesn't really get you fucking anywhere if that's where you stop. You have to go beyond that. You're not going to rest as that forever as you are now. Your purpose is to actually interact with this avatar experience that you're given. So interact with it, work with it, and do what is important to you, and work on something that is meaningful. That's my suggestion. So what do I work on that's meaningful? Well, my actual work isn't nearly as meaningful to me as what I'm doing right now. And even time with friends and family, or even, in some cases, awakenings and stuff. I mean, some of that isn't the same as what I'm doing right now, because this communication does ultimately have the ability to really change the course of someone's entire experience of the rest of their human life, and potentially beyond then. These teachings on a subjective level have a level of power, if applied correctly, to revolutionize your entire life. And it's an hour and 39 minutes into this, and like I said, 25-year-old mentally ill white guy. I obviously don't know anything, and there's nothing I can teach you about spirituality. This is how people can view this. This is how people can see me. This is how people can understand me. off of appearances, and they don't understand that there could very well be something beneath those appearances, which is making this rather improbable manifestation in front of you actually be of merit and substance. That is a possibility, I would say. So that's something to consider, that there are people, yes, having very, very unbelievable experiences, and a chain of unbelievable experiences. And much of it's been real. Maybe some of it was delusion, but there are people experiencing very radical, real things that are really beyond belief. And I know myself is at least a small part of this. Sadly, I can't say that I'm all of it or whatever, but yeah, I don't know. I think I really want to start doing some streams and stuff. Like I really need to get to 1,000 subscribers on YouTube, guys. Like, seriously, if you're at the video right now, even if you hate me, like, just do me a favor, just subscribe for right now. I just need to get to 1,000 subscribers, and then I can start live streaming from my phone, and I can produce a lot more content, a lot easier. Because a big problem is I like to do these long form videos, but then I'm uploading the video over a Wi-Fi connection on my internet that's not super slow, but it's really not fast. It's rather cheap internet, but it works. But it takes a bit to upload a video this big, in 1080p, 30 frames per second, I think is what I'm doing with this front-facing camera on my phone. That can be a pretty time-consuming file to upload over Wi-Fi when you don't have very fast Wi-Fi. So it slows down the creation process a lot for me to have to do that. So once I'm able to live stream, I don't know how many people will re-watch live streams, so that's a potential problem. I'm sure I'll have to still release plenty of normal videos, but I do want to really get into live streaming if people are gonna show up and watch. And it's probably at that point, and really now I probably need to start spamming my videos at the beginning, saying subscribe, hit the notification bell, because here soon, when I get to 1,000 subscribers, I'm gonna be doing live streams regularly, and I'll need you guys to have notifications on to know when those pop up a lot of the time, because you might not see an announcement ahead of time, or I might do a live stream on a whim and you might miss it. But I do want to look into eventually streaming on multiple platforms at once, like YouTube and Facebook, that kind of stuff, like potentially, because I have a lot of people on my Facebook. The thing is, I would need the video to be directly on Facebook. Like, when I post a link to a video on my Facebook, probably almost no one is going to actually click through it and watch it. But if I post a video that immediately plays on someone's timeline, such as a live stream, it immediately gets watched by hundreds of people probably. So doing a live stream would be a good way on my Facebook, would be a good organic way to build my channel, and maybe I should do more live streaming content. Maybe that's a thing. So, we'll see. I think I'm going to end this video now. The last bit here has been really a personal talk, personal strategizing just in front of you guys, because why does it matter? What's the problem? I mean, I want the channel to be bigger. I want to teach more people, and I want to be exposed to more people who are around this kind of stuff, who are around psychic abilities and spirituality and mental illness and all of this, because what that equates to is eventually you will become better at it the more that you're surrounded by these type of people. The more that I have people commenting on my videos wanting to talk to me who, have experience with this kind of stuff, the more times I talk to people like that who have experiences similar to me, the more I understand my own life and their personal life, and the things that we share, like maybe the psychic abilities, or maybe mental illness, or maybe pursuing awakening. So many different things can be shared on these levels, because I do have a rather broad approach to spirituality. I respect a lot of stuff from New Age, a lot of stuff from very ancient religions, and actually studying some of their traditional stuff and texts. Mainly Hinduism is my favorite for that. But yeah, just going through all these different religions, all these different systems, I've tried a lot of things, and I've interacted with a lot of things, and I've just noticed that there is a spiritual master that, for me, again, this is not a human entity, but yes, there is a spiritual master for me that has worked really well. And for example, there have been certain instances where I have thought of him, and thought of a connection with him or something, and basically on the spot I experienced psychedelic level changes in consciousness immediately and radically. And I've even noticed some changes to physical world phenomena when calling upon him. So this is a very intense thing for me. I know some people don't believe in this kind of stuff, and that's fine. But I've even had instances where, when I first encountered him, I had waves of like darkness going through my vision, and the person in the room who also has worked with this master, told me, this master is in the room, the one that we're discussing, the one that I've been telling you about or asking you about, is what the psychic woman was telling me. He's here. So she says all that, and then I have these strange effects happen to my vision, and then I take a picture on my phone, and it comes out a completely different color than the lighting of the room. It's very strange. It's never happened on my phone before. It's a very odd thing, especially to happen with the visual field changes, which were quite significant. Yeah, that's all there is. That's all. It's really radical stuff that I've went through. Some truly challenging things to put into a single paradigm and a single worldview. So I've worked really hard at a worldview that does work and can be developed further, and it's a pretty good one. It's a pretty good one overall. And a lot of the openness and different aspects of it that I've been able to explore and experience have come in a lot of ways through my bipolar disorder and, mental illness. So, I do owe a lot of that to that genetic cause and that familial cause. And you could also, of course, view this as a karmic thing, having the mental illness as both a blessing and a curse in this path, speeding things up, but making things far more challenging. Yeah, it's an interesting life, and it's a very good one overall. It's been amazing. But yeah, there's a lot more to be done, and it's beautiful to have this opportunity. It's beautiful to have this opportunity with you, whoever's viewing this, to be a part of this existence as you are, and to share that together. That is a wonderful thing. That is something not to be underestimated or undervalued. This is really a special thing that we are connected so deeply. So that's it for this video. Again, subscribe, like the video, comment below, interact in these ways, and I will do my best to get back if you have any comments. Feel free to request some topics for videos, things such as that. Thanks for watching.